My name is Katie Carter, and I live in a small town in Northern California. I have two children, and I even have a new grandchild, so you can imagine that I'm in my 60s. When I was 56, I decided to go back to school, and I chose Hawthorn University, mainly because it was online, but I'd heard so many good things about it, and a good friend of mine also was enrolled in the program. I just love what I'm doing, so my enthusiasm really shines through.
I want to welcome everyone to Hawthorn University. I'm Paula Bartholomew. I'm so delighted you joined me early. We have a few announcements, some holistic health news, and I get to have a brief conversation with our presenter, Donna Wild. Then at the top of the hour, we'll begin her presentation on physical observations of nutritional deficiencies. We're going to focus on skin, nails, and tongue, and specifically tongue today. So just a reminder that everyone in the audience is muted. We really want your participation, so just type your questions and comments in at any point during the presentation, and then at the end I will pose your questions for Donna to answer, and we'll have a nice dynamic question and answer period. And we'll also be posting information to you, the webinar panel throughout, so you can keep your eyes on that too. If you missed it, our last webinar featured Hawthorn's graduate, Dr. Elizabeth Naylor. She graduated from our doctoral program several years ago, and she was presenting on Vibrant Mom, Vibrant Baby. It was a great focused topic, and we recorded that webinar, and we're going to record this one too, so you'll be able to access both of them from our website under archived webinars at your convenience. I wanted to let you know about a new online event we're doing at Hawthorn. It's called All About Alumni, and that's what it's about, is our alumni. And I have the great pleasure of showcasing Hawthorn graduates for a 30-minute segment for them to give a presentation, and then we have time for 10 to 15 minutes for you to ask questions directly. And the presentations air at noon Pacific time on the first Wednesday of each month, and each graduate gets to share their success stories and talk about the challenges that they've learned from, and we'll hear their encouragement and really their advice to inspire the rest of us too. So we're going to do this tomorrow live on Wednesday, April 6th. We've got our Master in Holistic and Nutrition Education program graduate, Lori Ellis, and she shares her Back in a Whack program for teens. I got to say, I'm so thrilled that you get to learn about this program and everything Lori's doing. She's so terrific and has so much to contribute. I really hope you'll join me. It's a very inspiring segment, and what she's doing, I really want people to know about it. It's a good lunchtime opportunity, so you can prep some food and tune in with us live. A couple other things. Hawthorn has a survey for you to complete after this webinar. It's a great opportunity for you to be able to give us your feedback on this presentation and let us know, what you'd like to know more about in upcoming ones. And maybe even have a suggestion for a Hawthorn graduate you'd like to hear more about. The survey is a way to let me know. And I want you to know that I really do pay attention to this. I look for it first thing in the morning when James sends it over to see what your thoughts, ideas, and feedback is. So thank you. All right, that's it for announcements, and it's my pleasure and honor to be able to talk to our presenter. Hello, Donna Wild. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I'm happy to be here today, Paula.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to have you presenting for us at Hawthorn University, so welcome. I'm glad you have a few minutes to talk with me informally so that the audience can learn a little bit more about you, too. One of the things you generously did was share a few things, and one of them was one of your favorite quotes from Dr. Royal Lee, and I followed Dr. Royal Lee's work for years, and so I appreciate you bringing this forward. For those of you who don't know, he was a dentist and really affectionately known as the father of natural vitamins. The quote, Donna, is, "One of the biggest tragedies of human civilization is the precedence of chemical therapy over nutrition. It's a substitution of artificial therapy over natural, of poisons over food, in which we're feeding people poisons and try to correct their reactions of starvation." Donna, I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about this a little bit of why it speaks to you so much and why you picked that out as your all-time favorite quote.
Well, Dr. Lee said this, oh my goodness, in the 1940s or 50s, and it's even more prevalent today in the fact that we really need to look at whole foods to heal the ills of our population instead of or in conjunction with pharmaceuticals. But I truly believe the path to true health is through whole foods and good whole food nutrition.
Thank you. You know, he contributed so much to our knowledge of nutrition. He was a brilliant man. He was a researcher, an inventor, a scientist, and a philanthropist. So thank you for bringing this forward and sharing it with our community. Let's see next. You talked a little bit about whole foods, and that's important to you. What's your favorite food?
Oh, as I said, my favorite food is those that I get to make and prepare and share with other people, because this is such an important thing in our life, not only the sharing of good nutrients, but being the social aspects of sitting down to a meal and sharing it with the people we love most, or the people that we love most and would like to nourish and sit down and have a slow dining meal with conversation and community. And I think this is what's missing in our daily life, is that as a family, we do not sit down and have this important conversation time, as well as bringing nutrients and digestion, taking the time out of our day to sit down and even digest these foods that we eat.
Thank you so much for saying that. I think, you know, it's sad. You know, as a culture, we've pretty much forgotten what to eat, and certainly how to eat. So I applaud this idea of your favorite food and what it all encompasses. Thank you. And I think that dovetails nicely into talking about what you think your best holistic practice is.
Well, my best holistic practice is to come together in the kitchen and prepare meals as a family. This is such an important life.
I agree. It's worth every
Yes,
worth
it's
every bite,
not
right?
only lifestyle, but it's an important knowledge to be healthy and not only be healthy, but to impart to our children and our family the importance of gathering together for a meal and preparing good, wholesome foods.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm appreciative for you being here and for everybody that's joined us. I'm glad to be gathered together for this holistic event at Hawthorn University. So with that, I'm going to conclude our pre-webinar segment and move forward to introducing you as the presenter and your webinar, and turn it over to you in a few minutes. So
Thank you.
you bet. So anybody, if you've just tuned in, I want to welcome you also to Hawthorn University's webinar series, and thank you for joining us. I'm Paula Bartholomew. It's my honor to be the webinar moderator. And today we welcome Donna Wild to share her research and her experience in identifying the physical signs of nutrient deficiencies of the skin, the nails, and our tongue. I really expect this to be an informative and a fun webinar with a lot to learn. Donna is going to discuss the various signs that can be observed by looking at someone's skin, nails, and tongue, and we'll start by focusing on the tongue. So if you want to learn more about yours, be ready to stick it out and take a look in the mirror. I say this because looking closely at the tongue can be really helpful assessment tool. It can reveal specific issues of within the tissues and our organs and various systems of the body. And Donna's going to focus very specifically on the physiology of the tongue tonight. the specific nutrient deficiencies that contribute to abnormalities of the tongue, and some other signs and symptoms for each nutrient deficiency, as well as presenting the food sources and properties of the individual nutrients, and get into some nutritional, herbal, and dietary recommendations to support the underlying issues that arise. I want to let you a little bit more about Donna, that she has studied and practiced and taught holistic health for more than 30 years now, and has written and published and broadcast and lectured extensively on the natural restorative methods for both human and animal health. In 2012, she published a really important book that's entitled "The Skin, Tongue, and Nails Speak: Observational Signs of Nutritional Deficiencies." And currently, Ms. Wild owns and runs Unique Perspectives in Loveland, Colorado. She has a private practice there. She works as a consultant, lecturer, and author. And I love this part. In her backyard, Donna raises laying heads and honeybees, and lovingly tends her organic vegetable, fruit, and herb gardens. Welcome, Donna Wild. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here today.
I know you have some great information to share, so I'm going to turn it over to you and start your presentation.
Great. Let's get started. I would like to say that everything I'm going to cover today and in greater detail is in my book, The Skin, Tongue, and Nails Speak: Observational Signs of Nutritional Deficiencies. There's also other information on signs and symptoms of nutritional deficiencies, as well as dietary information. This book is available on my website or on Amazon. Also available on my website, and it is an ongoing, continuing process. Other information about diet and nutrition and wholesome foods can be found on my website. But let's get started, because I have a lot of information that I would like to cover today. And I'm sorry that this keeps popping up. So first of all, let's talk about how to do a tongue diagnosing. Preferably, you would like your client to have a clean mouth that has been recently brushed without anything eaten in between. You want them to stick out their tongue, tip down, palate flat. And then you want to observe certain things like the color. It should be a light red to a pink color. The shape should be an elongated oval, thin, not swollen, without any color, without any markings, fissures, cracks, bumps, lumps on the tongue. Then you also want to look at the coating. The coating should be slightly wet, with a thin white coating that's evenly distributed throughout the tongue. Then you want to see the flexibility. So you want to have your client move their tongue side to side, up and down, round and round, in and out. Because in Chinese medicine, they believe that a supple and mobile tongue will actually reflect the sharpness of the mind and the coordination of the body. And here are pictures of normal tongues. But in Chinese tongue diagnosing, the reason why it works and the reason why it also reflects nutritional deficiencies in the tongue is that there's an abundance of blood vessels in the tongue. And therefore, there is abundance of blood flow in the tongue. Also, there is a rapid regeneration of the tongue's topmost coating, which is an epithelial tissue. And these cells regenerate in 2 to 3 days. So between that rapid regeneration of the tongue's coating and this abundance of blood that flows through the tongue, The slightest change in any of the blood's constituents are reflected in the tongue, often before symptoms show up in the body. Then there are energy meridians that flow through the tongue. These are pathways through which vital energy flows in the body that corresponds to different organs and systems. And here is a Chinese tongue map. You can see the different organs and systems that are reflected in the tongue. So if you see any markings, lumps, bumps, fissures, cracks, change in the coatings that occur in the tongue, please look at the tongue map and correspond it to other systems and organs that might be going on. And here are some examples. This is a thick tongue. It does not fit into the space provided in the palate. Therefore, you get these teeth marks or ripples on the side of the tongue. This is a reflection of a pituitary or a thyroid insufficiency. Here is another picture of a tongue. You can see the tongue is a light color, therefore there's an anemia. It switches to one side, which is reflective of a heart condition or a potential heart condition. Plus, you can also see that there's a fork in the front of the tongue, which is also reflective of the heart. So if a client came into me and stuck out its tongue and I saw this, I would be concerned of a potential heart or stroke that may be going on or maybe in the future of this client. So these are things that we need to look for. But also, because of this rapid upper layer cell regeneration and the fact that blood flows through the tongue, nutrient deficiencies can also be reflected. So let's start talking about those. And these deficiencies all come from Western medicine textbooks, nursing textbooks, nutritional textbooks, and peer review journals. And all these references are in the book. So let's start with a vitamin B2 or riboflavin deficiency. One of the first things to look for is the change of the color of the tongue. The tongue turns purple or a magenta color, which is an indication of blood stasis. Also, there occurs cracks or fissures at the mouth corners. There is also a loss of the taste buds and loss of taste that's associated with a riboflavin deficiency. Now, very interesting is that riboflavin is needed for blood circulation and circulation problems, and for blood flow. So with a riboflavin deficiency, you're looking at blood stasis, circulatory problems, sensitivity to light and also sound. There's sore lips, but there's also a sore mouth, a sore tongue, and a sore throat. There's also inflamed buccal mucosa or the lining of the inner cheeks, as well as the atrophy of taste buds that we spoke about. Foods that are a rich source of riboflavin that I recommend are brewer's yeast or nutritional yeast. unrefined grains, especially the bran, and germ, which does not contain gluten, and also the sprouts of these unrefined grains. It's also abundant in organ meats such as liver and brain, and although we don't see brain in our diet, you can look to things like shrimp that come with brains, fish that come with brain, crawfish that come with brain. Also, a rich source is found in dairy, especially raw milk and raw milk products such as cheeses, kefir, yogurt, and also mushrooms are a rich source of this bioflavonoids. Moving on to a vitamin B3 or niacinamide deficiency, glossitis or a swollen tongue is a sign of a B3 deficiency. In a niacinamide deficiency, we're looking at an inflamed, swollen, painful, hot tongue. Also, in a niacinamide deficiency, there's actually cracks on the tongue there's cracks on the lips, where in a B2 deficiency, the cracks are on the lip corners. Niacinamide is also called nicotinic acid or vitamin B3. If you look on the label and you see niacinamide, that is a synthetic form of the B3 vitamin. Niacinamide works in synergy with B6, B2, and tryptophan. And interestingly, if you eat foods that are high in niacinamide, they're also high in these other cofactors. Niacinamide is necessary for energy production, cholesterol, and fat metabolism. It's actually a lipotrophic vitamin, and it can actually take fat and cholesterol out of the bloodstream. It's necessary for digestion. It's necessary to support the epithelial tissue, which not only is the skin, but lines the intestinal tract as well as the mucous membranes. So it's important for any type of allergies. It's also important for the nervous system and for DNA reproduction and repair. It's very important for pregnant women to eat plenty of niacinamide while they are pregnant. Also, with a niacinamide deficiency, there's dermatitis that occurs, and diarrhea, and irritability, and depression, and insomnia. Rich sources of niacinamide include lean meats, whether they're red meats or poultry, fish, especially tuna and halibut. So let's just take a moment to talk about healthy wild-caught sea fish. I prefer getting seafood from the poles. They tend to be cleaner and have less toxins in them. So whether they come from the North Pole or the Pacific, Nova Scotia, Scotland, or whether they come from the South Poles, which are more South America, these fish tend to be cleaner and have less toxins in them. Another rich source of niacinamide is organ meats, especially liver. Peanuts is an excellent source for those that do not have peanut allergies, and I would prefer them to be raw, and if you would like, you can soak them and dehydrate them. One of my favorite B vitamin supplements is nutritional or brewer's yeast. It is full of B vitamins, trace minerals, as well as protein. And a lot of the B vitamins need to have protein in them as well. Wheat germ, which does not contain gluten, is also a rich source of niacinamide. Niacinamide deficiencies are related to pellagra. And signs of pellagra are an inflamed tongue and dermatitis. And one of the big signs is a rash on the face, which resembles a butterfly shape. It comes on the bridge of the nose and on the cheeks. This can also happen on the back of the neck and what's referred to as Cassell's necklace. And I've actually seen this in people around and about town. It is a raised rash that takes on this beaded effect. Pellagra was a nutritional deficiency that was actually plagued the 16th and 17th century Europe. And Cassell was a Spanish physician that was studying pellagra and trying to come up with a cure for pellagra. In pellagra, there is dermatitis, which may show up as the skin rash, eczema, as well as diarrhea, although it starts out with constipation. And then it can lead to dementia and other types of neurological problems, such as such as neurasthenia, vertigo, insomnia, loss of memory and coordination, headaches, loss of strength, paralysis or pain in the limbs, as well as tingling, depression, and nervousness. Left untreated, pellagra can actually turn into death. So, pellagra actually plagued the South in America in the early 1900s. And the United States Army actually commissioned Dr. Joseph Goldberger, who was a medical doctor practicing in New York City at the time, to come up with a cure for pellagra. He discovered that it wasn't an infectious disease. It was actually a combined nutrient deficiency of niacinamide, our B3, vitamin B6, B2, and tryptophan. And he actually found that giving food that contain these nutrients will actually cure and prevent pellagra, which was predominant in orphanages, mental institutions, because of the mental aspects that happens with a vitamin G deficiency, and prisons. And actually, vitamin G was named for Dr. Goldberger. But he discovered that pellagra could actually be resolved within 6 to 9 months of a diet consisting of liver and organ meat, red meat, raw milk and cheeses, nutritional yeast, blackstrap molasses, which is one of my favorite trace mineral and vitamin B supplements, egg yolks, and leafy green vegetables. In the South, they were eating salt pork and cornbread, which was probably not soaked, to get rid of the nutrient blocking enzymes that they incur. So symptoms of preclinical pellagra or a vitamin G deficiency that we see in practice are chronic fatigue, whether they're physical or mental, digestive problems, whether they be gas, bloating, indigestion, flatulence, of loss of weight, strength, or appetite, constipation, diarrhea, eczema, and other type of skin conditions, especially a thickening of the skin that's highly pigmented, sleep conditions such as insomnia, vertigo, loss of balance, headaches, irritability, depression, loss of memory, inability to concentrate, loss of coordination, and pain in the limbs. Doesn't this sound like a lot of our senior citizens and the geriatrics patients that we are seeing in our practice? These people, as well as those with digestive problems, we really should look to a vitamin G deficiency. So what exactly are the G factors? They're the riboflavins or vitamin B2, niacinamide or vitamin B3, pyridoxine or vitamin B6, biotin or vitamin B7, choline and inositol, which are so important for the brain, as well as folate or what's considered vitamin B9. And what are the functions of the vitamin G factors? They're vasodilating, so they actually expand the blood vessels, allowing blood to flow to different organs in the system. They're nerve relaxing, so they basically relax people that are incredibly stressed out. And they're nerve regenerating, so they not only build nerves, but they also help with people that have had strokes and other nerve conditions. They're a cholinesterase precursor, which is needed at all nerve synapses. Because they're lipotrophic, they help with fat metabolism through the liver, but they also clear out fat and cholesterol in the blood vessel. We also talked about them being anti-pellagra, but they're also antiviral. So let's take a moment to talk about viruses and how we combat them with B vitamins and some herbs. One of them is warts. Warts can be treated with vitamin G internally, but I also like to treat them externally. Warts are aerobic. They need oxygen to survive. So if we can suffocate the warts, we can control them on the surface while we're treating them internally with vitamin G. So what I like to do is have my clients cover the warts with a thick oil, whether it be a vitamin E oil or a flaxseed oil, and then put a Band-Aid on top of it. This will help suffocate the wart and will kill it externally. Another thing that I like to use is the herb greater celandine. Greater celandine, if you take the fresh plant and break off a piece of the succulent herb, it contains a yellow sap. Putting that yellow sap topically on the herb will actually kill the wart. However, that sap is very caustic, so it can only be used 2 to 3 times a week. Another virus that vitamin G helps is herpes. We also know herpes as shingles. They're the same type of virus. I like to treat these with vitamin G internally, but topically, I like to use St. John's wort, and I also use St. John's wort internally. St. John's wort is an herb that is indicated for envelope viruses. Envelope viruses are viruses that actually have a lipid layer. They make them very difficult for the immune system to combat and take care of. St. John's wort will actually penetrate that envelope virus and help combat these viruses such as shingles, herpes, AIDS, and hepatitis C. The food sources of vitamin G we've already gone over. They're the same foods that Dr. Goldberg used to treat and cure pellagra. So let's move on to a vitamin B12 deficiency. Vitamin B12 is also known as cyanocobalamin. With a vitamin B12 deficiency, the tongue becomes inflamed, hot, sore. What's in Chinese medicine is referred to beefy. It becomes glossy. It loses its coating and also loses its taste buds and becomes very sore. In losing its taste buds, clients also lose their taste, their sense of taste. In Chinese medicine, it's considered a qi deficiency. Qi is the body's life force. They also use the herb astragalus. Now, in Chinese medicine and also eclectic medicine, herbs are never used in isolation. They're always used in combination. But astragalus is used to support the immune system. It's actually an immune tonic. However, it should be discontinued in an acute infection because astragalus is very warming. And when there's a fever, we don't want to increase that fever. So we stop the use of astragalus. Astragalus is also an adrenal adaptogen, a cardiotonic, it's a diuretic. It raises that vitality that is missing with that qi deficiency. It's good for chronic fatigue, to increase appetite, and also for prolapse or uterine bleeding. It promotes healthy tissue and cell regeneration. Interestingly, with B vitamins, they're needed to help and nourish the blood. And our blood is our life force and is reflected in the qi. Symptoms of vitamin B12 deficiencies include pernicious anemia. Now, pernicious anemia is when the red blood cells do not fully mature. Folate is needed in the long bones of the body to produce red blood cells. B12 is needed to mature those red blood cells. Other signs of B12 deficiencies include weakness and fatigue, heart palpitations, irritability, hostility, agitation, forgetfulness, confusion, poor memory, unstable gait, depression, psychosis, and numbing and tingling of the extremities. This sounds like a lot of people in our society that are now suffering with senility. And it is known for senility that the best thing to do to regenerate brain tissue and nerve cell tissue is vitamin B12, vitamin D, an increase of cholesterol, because cholesterol actually wraps the nerve sheaths of the body, and the majority of the mind or brain is made up of cholesterol, as well as sunshine and exercise. And throughout our aging, we can create new brain cells and don't have to succumb to senility and Alzheimer's. Also, limiting carbohydrates help with that as well. So, rich food sources of vitamin B12 include liver, kidney, and heart. Fish, not only sea fish and wild-caught seafood, but freshwater fish. Sardines, crayfish, trout, and herring are very high in these, and especially shellfish like oysters and clams. Dairy products and eggs contain a lot of vitamin B12, especially those that are raised on grass. Brewer's yeast and nutritional yeast is an excellent source of vitamin B12 that I use a lot with my clients, as well as crenini mushrooms, maca root, which is a root from South America, kelp or any type of sea vegetables, and fermented foods, whether they be sauerkraut, tempeh, yogurt, kefir, beer, and kimchi. Now, I would like to say that I do not use fermented soy with my clients with thyroid problems, even though they are known. Fermenting soy kills the goitrogens. I just don't like to use them with my thyroid patients. However, people that have a good gut flora or microbiome can actually produce their own vitamin B12. So that's good reason to have your clients eat fermented foods daily. In fact, I recommend my clients to eat a little bit of fermented foods with every meal. But getting back to the tongue, let's talk about fat cracks and fissures coating the whole tongue. That tongue is kind of scary looking, and I have seen these in my practice. It is actually an advanced B vitamin deficiency. In Chinese medicine, is considered a qi and a yin deficiency. Remember, qi is the vital energy, and in Chinese medicine, yi, which is the female side or force, reflects the blood. And isn't it interesting that we need B vitamins to get in the Krebs cycle to help us produce our energy? And it's also needed to create good, healthy blood. People that tend to have tongues that look like this actually have problems with psychosis and some other mental deficiencies. So I know I talked about a lot about vitamin B and vitamin G, but vitamin G is just a factor of the whole vitamin B complex that is found in foods. The B factor, which is your B1 or thiamine, B4, which the FDA does not recognize any longer, vitamin B12 and vitamin B5, these are the nerve stimulating, vasoconstricting B vitamins that I tend to use with people that have chronic fatigue and low blood pressure. The fact that they're vasoconstricting will actually raise the blood pressure. Then there's the G factors we were just talking about. These are the nerve relaxing, nerve stimulating, nerve regenerating factors that I tend to use with people who are in stress and tend to be in sympathetic dominance. And then the other B factors that I have not yet been able to give a designated B or G factors. And then manganese is that trace mineral activator of the B complex. So let's move on to an iron deficiency as it shows up on the skin, tongue, and lips. Angular cheilitis is an inflammation of the mucous membranes, and it actually is swollen lips and that are painful and lose their definition. Also, an iron deficiency, not only is the skin pale, but the tongue is pale and actually turns on a white color. And this is an indication of anemia or poor circulation. With an iron deficiency, you'll also see those sores at the mouth angles, as well as a loss of the taste buds and a loss of the sense of taste. So when we have a loss of sense or taste, you need to rule out some pharmaceutical medications, especially those that treat allergies that might interfere with it. But I have found in practice that by giving them B and G and zinc and iron within 9 to 12 months, I can actually get back their sense of taste and smell. So let's talk about the function of iron and what it does in the body. It's actually a component of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin carries oxygen in the blood, but iron is also needed to get oxygen from the lungs into the blood. Iron is also a component of myoglobin. Myoglobin is sort of like hemoglobin, but actually occurs in the muscles. It stores and releases oxygen in the muscles for energy production. It is essential for ATP or energy production in the body. It's also a cofactor for many energy systems, enzyme systems in the body. Other signs of iron deficiencies are pale complexions, dark circles under the eyes. Now, this can also be signs of allergies or B vitamin deficiencies. Fatigues and people who chill easily in the extremities and even when it's warm outside tend to have iron deficiency. Brittle nails and also spoon nails, where the nails actually become concave. This can be a sign of an iron deficiency or a sign of too much iron in the body, which is very interesting because too little or too much of a nutritional deficiency has the same signs and symptoms. Heart palpitations are another sign of iron deficiencies. A rapid heart rate or palpitations, and especially rapid breathing upon exertion. So if someone cannot run up a flight of stairs without becoming breathless, look to an iron deficiency. Another deficiency would be a vitamin E2, which actually takes oxygen from the blood and drives it into tissue. And I use it a lot for altitude sickness that people coming from out of state often experience in our high altitude in Colorado. So let's talk about some food sources of iron. Actually, meat sources are your best bioavailable form. So red meats and organ meats, especially liver. Fish, whether wild caught or fresh water. Oysters, whether raw or cooked, are a good source, as well as poultry. Less bioavailable source include your dark green vegetables such as spinach, kale, and lettuces, egg yolks, and blackstrap molasses. Blackstrap molasses is rich in B vitamins, iron, magnesium, and a lot of trace minerals. And I use it a lot with my clients as a trace mineral supplement if they like the taste of it. Not everyone likes the taste, and if you are going to use it, please use the unsulfured type. Moving on, if you see this patchy coating on your clients, it is called migratory or geographic tongue. These patchy coatings actually look like land masses on a map, and that's how it got its name. This is an indication of a yeast infection. Left untreated, you get this thick white coating all over the tongue. Even further, you lose the coating on the tongue completely and a loss of the taste buds. Other signs of yeast infections in infants are thrush and cradle cap. Actually, with thrush, if the mother is nursing, I give the mother probiotics and fermented foods, and the baby will get it through the mother's milk, but you can also get a powdered acidophilus and bifidus and wet your finger and give it to the child and let the infant suckle it off your finger. With cradle cap, you can take a warm washcloth, put a little bit of vinegar on it because vinegar is antifungal. Wring it out so that you don't allow the vinegar to get into the infant's eyes and hurt them, and just wash the top of the head with that light vinegar and water solution. Other signs of yeast and fungal infections in adults are dandruff. Again, you can rinse your hair with vinegar while using something internally to treat it. Athlete's foot. Be very careful because in gyms, and through showers, even in your own house, you can spread that. So what I recommend for my clients is to clean the shower stalls out with vinegar, as long as it's not tile, because vinegar will actually degrade the grout. Nail funguses are also another sign of yeast infections. Ringworms, that we consider a parasite, as well as mange in dogs, are a fungal infection, as well as folliculitis. Folliculitis actually is an inflammation and an infection surrounding the hair follicles. It's very painful, and it can happen on the scalp or on any hair follicles throughout the body. Yeast infection is one symptom. It can also be a parasite or a viral infection or bacterial infection that could be causing that. So let's take a look at how yeast infects the skin. Actually, diaper rash is considered a fungal infection. With fungal-related rashes, they're red, they're raised, they're itch, they could hurt. They occur a lot on the inner thighs of women that tend to have vaginal yeast infection, but they can occur anywhere on the body, whether it be on the neck, the hands, or other places. Some other signs of yeast infections can be itching, including jock itch, gas and flatulence, abdominal bloating and pain. All these digestive symptoms are basically yeast infections, and what's going on is any sugar or carbohydrates the client is eating is actually being turned into an alcohol-like beer and releasing gas. Vaginal discharges can be seen in both men and women. Anyone that seems to crave carbohydrates and sugar, I always look to a yeast infection and actually treat the yeast while trying to get them off of their sugar and carbohydrates. Interestingly, ear and sinus infections, most oftenly they are finding, are related to yeast and fungus. So we're used to giving antibiotics for ear and sinus infections when maybe we should be giving a probiotic, because you need to remember that there's flora and microbiome within all the tissue of our body, whether it's the mouth, the sinuses, the ears, the intestinal tract, the skin, the genital organs. They all contain a microbiome that we need to replenish in times of any infections. Lactic acidosis is when after someone eats, they become very tired and want to take a nap. This not only is a sign of a yeast infection and the yeast turning into alcohol, but it's also a sign of a B vitamin deficiency. And it is a well-known medical fact that anyone who has cancer also has a yeast infection, which we should treat first and foremost with any of our cancer clients. An easy way to determine if your client has a yeast infection is a Candida saliva test. This is fun. Clients like to do it. I say it should be done first thing upon rising, before you put anything into your mouth. However, when a client enters my office, I have them do it immediately. So I have them gather a big pool of saliva on their tongue and spit it into a glass of water, and note the time that they've done this. Then you need to check the water every 15 minutes for up to 1 hour. Then you want to look to see if there's string-like legs floating down into the water from that pool of saliva on the top of the water. You also want to see if that saliva floated to the bottom or if there's specks floating in the water. If anything occurs like this, then the saliva is carrying a fungal or yeast overgrowth. If in 1 hour that pool of saliva is still sitting on the top of the water unaffected, then you know that your client is candida free. So what do we give in a yeast infection? Well, the first thing we're going to look for is a probiotic supplement. Lactobacillus acidophilus and Bifidobacterium longum. These two really like milk sugars to create lactic acid, which will change the pH of the gut and allow good bacteria to thrive and basically starve the bad yeast that's going on. But they really like that milk sugar. So I use them for people that can eat dairy. I also use an acidophilus yeast, which is a type of mycelium yeast. And I'll also look for a Saccharomyces yeast. And Saccharomyces boulardii is a type of yeast that will actually penetrate that microfilm that engulf and surround a lot of yeast infections. Another type of Lactobacillus and acidophilus is the plantarum that comes and is found in fermented vegetables. So as a nutritionist, I want my clients eating fermented foods. These are yogurt, kefir, buttermilk, also sour cream, and our cultured hard cheeses. But again, they're only for clients who can do dairy. Kombucha and kvass are actually fermented drinks, kvass coming from beets, as well as borscht, which is a type of fermented beet soup. Then there's our fermented vegetables, such as sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, and again, the fermented soy, such as miso and tempeh. Other herbs and nutrients to consider in a yeast or fungal infection is podiarco. This is an herb from South America that will actually kill a yeast infection, as well as devil's claw, which not only will kill a yeast infection, but also a bacterial and viral infection. And when gut dysbiosis is going on, there's usually not only yeast, but there could be parasitic, viral, and a bacterial infection all going on at the same time. Tea tree is another herb that you can use to fight a fungal infection. This is also very good to use topically with tea tree oil. Garlic, especially fresh, raw garlic, will kill not only yeast, but viral and bacterial infections. It is important to have the client, if they're doing raw garlic, to chop it up or crush it or slice it 10 minutes ahead of time to allow the allicin which is the phytochemical that's very potent in garlic to be able to develop. We talked about vinegar. It could be used topically and internally to fight a yeast infection, as well as caprylic acid. Then we want to look at a prebiotic to feed your probiotics. So we can look at pectin, slippery elm bark, marshmallow root. These are all safe to use. Then there's our polysaccharides that are our vegetable sources of carbohydrate and modified food starches that feeds our probiotic. However, these are contraindicated with people that are on a FODMAP diet because they could create more gas and flatulence and feed the bad bacteria. So you need to use it as your discretion whether it's time to introduce these polysaccharides, which are so nourishing because the fiber actually absorbs fluids, creates this gelatinous mass that slows down food and absorption through the digestive tract, and also contains elements that eat up toxins that are found in the digestive tract because of all these infections. Along with that, you really need to eliminate the carbohydrates and sugars in the diet. I start with a modified yeast diet. This is found on my website, but it slowly integrates the client to get off of some of these foods without making them feel guilty. I love the GAPS diet, but it is very hard to implement. It is also very hard to heal a client when they're under stress and guilt. So we're going to work in baby steps to modify their diet to get them off of the processed and sugary foods that they're eating that is feeding their yeast infection. And yeast infections can sometimes be hard to resolve. You can become reinfected through a sexual partner, so you need to treat both partners when you're treating a client with a yeast infection. But these fungal spores are also found in our mouth, so they're on your toothbrush. So every time you brush your teeth, you're reinfecting yourself. So I recommend my clients to either put the toothbrush in the dishwasher or soak them in a little hydrogen peroxide or apple cider vinegar to destroy those spores. Also, the use of antibiotics, which we all know, but did you also realize that colloidal silver not only kills the bad bacteria, but also the good bacteria? Any type of chlorinated water, whether it be pools, showers, baths, hot tubs, what I recommend to my clients is to either get a filter to put on your shower head to take out the chlorine, or to run a very hot bath and allow the chlorine, which is a gas, to dissipate for 10 minutes before getting into the tub. Also, eating a high sugar or refined carbohydrate diet can cause a yeast infection, and also parasites. Parasites give off an exotoxin that yeast loves. Yeast gives off an exotoxin that parasites love. So whenever there's a hard to resolve yeast infection, I also look for a parasitic infection. Chronic diarrhea can cause a yeast infection. simply because all the good flora is coming out with the stools. Also, hormone replacement, whether it be birth control or hormone replacement that happens in later life, and stress. Stress in itself can cause an increase of estrogen that feeds and can cause a yeast infection. So I know I've gone over my time, but I will stay and answer any of your questions. And also, here are some references and books that you can look into to get more information on what I was talking about.
Thank you so much, Donna. No worries. You went just right. We're just ready for some questions and for you to respond to some things that people are asking about. So thank you for that information. There's a couple things that came up. First is one of the first pictures that you showed was actually the first picture of the tongue. You showed it as being about the pituitary and the thyroid. And Marina's wondering why it's not related to the gallbladder and liver, according to the tongue map that you showed.
Okay, that's a very good question. Actually, in Chinese medicine, when the liver becomes deficient, the next thing to go is the thyroid, and then vision. So when treating thyroid, we actually need to always look at the liver and detoxify it. For the majority of the conversion from T4, which is the primary storage form of thyroxine or the thyroid hormone, the conversion of T4 to T3, which is the active form, takes place in the liver, and the backup is the small intestines, which again goes back to the gut dysbiosis and treating the liver in all these conditions. Excellent question. Thank you for raising it.
Yeah, thank you. You also talked about using blackstrap molasses sometimes as a supplement. So the question is, do you use it just like as a sweetener, or do you dilute it in water in any way? Do you have any tips of how to use it or how much?
Okay, I never use it with a yeast infection because, again, it's a sugar and it can feed yeast. But I do use it for problems with constipation, with blood dyscrasias, and as a trace mineral supplement. And the way I have my clients take it is I have them start with 1 teaspoon per day, and I see how that moves their bowels, and I'll actually go up to 2 tablespoons. With people who get joint pain when the barometer changes or when weather changes, that's also a sign of trace mineral deficiencies. So I'll also have them determine the dose they need, not only until how the bowels work, because being high in magnesium, I use blackstrap molasses as a natural laxative, but also to stop that pain in their joints that come with changes in the barometer. So dosing is very individualized. But I'll go from 1 teaspoon to 2 tablespoons and even more per day.
All right, great, thank you. Tammy's saying that she has a couple of clients that have tongue reactions to things like wine, especially white ones, but sometimes red, and also when they eat pineapple. She wonders if this is a sign of a deficiency or of a sensitivity. She believes that one has a reaction to foods with added citric acid as well. One of her clients does. And so I asked what kind of reactions they had, and she said one was a zinging, a painful tingling of sorts, and the other one was just pain with some bumps. I wonder if you have thoughts on that.
Actually, eating acid foods can cause an irritation of the tongue. swelling, pain, tingling. And it could be, well, actually it all comes down to leaky gut. And we need, once we get rid of the gut dysbiosis, we need to heal the gut. So I would take them off of citrus foods and look at other things to knit the tissue of the gut back together. Not only the lining of the gut back together. Not only does it need healthy flora and a probiotic, but let's look at other forms of vitamin C, vitamin A, and vitamin P to knit that tissue back together, which is found in a lot of colorful fruits and vegetables that don't have to be citrus. So I take my clients off of the foods that they react to while I'm dealing with the gut dysbiosis and healing that digestive membrane so that they don't react to food. They also need a lot of protein, especially glutamine or glutamic acid, to knit that tissue back together.
Right. I thank you, Tammy. Thanks you. I'm going to go back to yeast a little bit here. There's a few questions. Randy said she's read that if you have a candida, you should not drink kombucha, as the sugars in it feed the candida.
That's true.
I want to follow this because I think they go together. Amy's saying that that she has a sensitivity to yeast and have been told to stay away from fermented foods since they contain yeast. So I wonder if you have advice about that.
Wow, that's really a two-part question.
Okay, we'll take them as two separate ones.
let's
We'll start with
start
Randy's
with the first one.
and candida and kombucha.
Okay, not everyone does well on kombucha. Some people do and some people don't. And yes, there is sugar, but the sugar feeds the fermentation process, and it works for some people and it doesn't work for others. So technically in kombucha, the sugar is changed into a healthy fungus. Your clients will know if kombucha works for them or not by the fact if they become gaseous and bloating and gut distension. And if you do not feel comfortable using kombucha with your clients for yeast, then I do not recommend it. The second part is fermented foods. And again, fermented foods can acidify the gut and reduce the yeast infection. However, those with SIBO and long-term gut dysfunction may react to fermented foods. If they do, take them off of it. And then I start my clients with maybe an ounce or two of a fermented food that agrees with them. And I find everybody's individual, and they'll need to find something that works for them. And I'm sorry for not being more specific, but in cases of these cases, I look to their heritage. What did their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents eat? These are the foods that tend to be more tolerated. If your client cannot tolerate them, take them off of it and try a probiotic temporarily while we're building up good, healthy microbiome. Did that answer her question in a roundabout way?
I didn't think it was so roundabout. I thought it was very direct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let us know if you have more there. All right. Back to physical signs there. What if somebody has a tongue that has indentations along the outer perimeter of the tongue? What's that mean?
Are they cracks or fissures,
It's
or?
indentations. So you had showed a tongue early on, I think, that had ridges. I don't know if that's the same as the indentation along the outer perimeter.
And I don't know if that was the question as well. I do know that in those vitamin B6 and B3 deficiencies, that the outer edge tends to become raised and red, and then the middle of the tongue tends to become normal. And that's one of the first signs of a vitamin G deficiency. Is that what she's asking?
Not sure. It was clearly pointed out as indentations along the outer perimeter. So
I would look to a thick tongue and a pituitary or a thyroid insufficiency then.
okay, just a second here. I'm maybe getting clarification. So Jennifer is saying a scalloped tongue with scalloped edges bilaterally can be caused from a clenching and grinding of the teeth, usually nocturnal.
You know, I've never heard of that, but clenching and grinding of the teeth, I use, again, that vitamin G complex, but it can also be the sign of a parasitic infection.
Interesting, yeah. And, you know, just back here to clarification is when you're saying that reaction to fermented foods, do you mean bloating, flatulence, things like that when you're speaking reactions?
Correct, although some people will actually have a histamine reaction to a fermented food. So there's other signs of histamine reactions, you know, congestion, rashes, swelling.
Okay, thank you. I can't remember. Did you actually go over the cause of nail ridges? You're going to cover that next time, right?
Actually, that's going to be in the next presentation that I do. But for those that are interested, it could be a vitamin F deficiency, which is actually an array of essential fatty acids that drive minerals into tissue, or it could also be a heart involvement.
Okay, well, imagine you let you get more into that next time, but thank you for taking it right now. The examples that you presented, various symptoms of the tongue, they represent severe vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and if so, will the tongue show mild deficiencies that can lead to a chronic deficiency?
Yes, they will.
You talked about the vitamin G combination. Do you have a brand that you like and recommend?
Well, I use Standard Process because it's whole foods. And they have actually a G supplement, but there may be some things in there that clients react to. And therefore, I like using the nutritional yeast. Actually, I recommend brewer's yeast, and I like Lewis Labs because it's actually grown on beets in a fermentation process.
Me too.
And where was I going with that?
You were going with recommendation for vitamin G and
Yes,
the Standard Process, and yeah.
So it's less reactive in some people. And actually, the type of yeast, which I believe is it's a Subversies type of yeast, also is a probiotic, but not everybody likes the taste of it or are willing to do the 2 tablespoons that are recommended to increase energy. And therefore, you can find it in a encapsulated form in Mega Foods, which is available in health food stores, and there's a professional brand that, escapes me right now.
It's okay, it'll come to you. But I've also, in my reading on this and vitamin G, that the current name for it is, it refers to riboflavin complex, most specifically vitamin B2. So people could get, a B vitamin complex and get this covered, right?
As long as there's B3, B6, and tryptophan as well. So it needs
the tryptophan is the outstanding one of that, yeah, because that
exactly.
there you get to, yeah.
And
really
even B2 is found protein bound in foods, and that's the beauty of nutritional yeast. It's high in amino acid and the trace minerals, as well as all those B vitamins.
Okay. No, Lucy, there's no stupid questions here. Back to somebody has candida, would brewer's yeast be counterindicated?
That's all individual.
Yeah.
So,
okay, so I'll let you finish.
You can try it on your client and see how they respond, but I like to use it. However, if they have a yeast infection, I would be more inclined to put them on a healthy probiotic and take them off of the refined carbohydrates and sugars.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have to remember that in a yeast infection, B vitamins, the yeast likes B vitamins and eat it up. So most people with the yeast infection are B vitamin deficient. How you introduce those B vitamins in what ways depends individually on how you're going to treat your client. I tend to remove offending foods, remove stress, deal with the gut dysbiosis and any parasites that are going on, and then tend to do a rebuilding protocol. However, if they come to me with a B vitamin deficiency, which shows up as muscle weakness and dementia and tingling of the extremities and chronic fatigue and heart conditions, you bet I'm going to give them a good source of B vitamins to help them for the reasons why they came to see me, as I'm trying to do a long-term healing process, because it can take more than 18 months to heal the gut lining after we get rid of the gut dysbiosis.
Yeah, it can take time depending on how ripped up it is. There's, back to the candida and the brewer's yeast a minute. I lost. So I don't know if you've noticed a change in the nutritional values of Lewis Labs brewer's yeast in the past year or so.
Yes, I did. And
yeah.
they changed it. However, I still think it's one of the better ones on the market.
Yeah.
But what I recommend for my clients is to go into the health food store, read the labels, find something that actually was grown on food, and make sure there's nothing in it that they're allergic to. Because what I found is some of the nutritional yeast and brewer's yeast contain wheat, and that doesn't work for my clients that are intolerant to gluten.
Sure. And with brewer's yeast, introducing it, when I have clients, if there's any concern of sensitivity or reactivity, I start really low, like a half a teaspoon at a time, and really monitor response carefully. And if they tolerate it, you can increase slowly over time.
That's a great way of doing it. I usually start them with 1 teaspoon and tell them to work up a dose of tolerance. If at any time my clients react to anything I recommend, I tell them to contact me immediately. We just might have to take them off of it, or sometimes just reduce the dose.
Okay, there's just a couple more questions if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
Thank you. If someone has a fissure straight down the center of the tongue, what's that indicate?
A B vitamin deficiency.
There's a lot of B vitamin deficiency around in there.
Yes, it does show up on the tongue, but remember, the tongue's not only a vehicle of blood going through it, which you need B vitamins, but it's a muscle, which also needs B vitamins.
Right. And you were talking about pituitary deficiency early on. Would you review the foods that are recommended for a pituitary deficiency?
The pituitary needs a lot of vitamin E and manganese. So foods that are high in vitamin, whether there are green leafy vegetables or organ meats, or for those that can do grains. And manganese is high in blueberries. So
Yeah.
it's very important to have your clients eating a very colorful diet. In my practice, I have seen that my clients that eat 5 to 7, if not more, servings of fresh fruits and vegetables, especially those colorful vegetables, tend to be the healthiest.
Mhm.
They're not vegetarians per se, they're just ones that eat a lot of fruit, colorful, fresh fruit and vegetables.
Yeah, so the darker pigmented fruits and vegetables for pituitary would really stand out in my mind. The dark purples, reds, so the dark berries, like you say, blueberries, blackberries, elderberries, and then the purple foods, eggplant, purple potatoes, dark pigmented things like that will
Not
really support
only
the
that,
pigment.
but why not choose a red-tipped leaf, a
Yeah,
red-tipped kale? I live in Colorado, it's cold. I not only grow Siberian kale because it works well in our client, but it gets this beautiful gray-purple color. So when I not only choose the foods that I buy for my family, but I choose what I grow in the garden, I tend to go with more of the colorful ones. So instead of growing a green pepper, I'll grow a yellow or an orange or a red type of pepper. As well as everything that I grow, I need it to be colorful to make sure we're getting the complete array of vitamins. These purple and red vegetables not only heal the intestinal tract, but they knit the blood vessels together, and they're also very healthy for brain function.
thank you. I have one more question and a comment to close with. This one's about affects the ears when there's tinnitus, and is there a deficiency component associated when there's ringing in the ears or buzzing?
Oh, wow. Ringing in the ears can be many different things. It can be an infection. It can be adrenals. It can be a blockage of cholesterol or fat. It can be a misalignment. I usually use a form of vitamin G that acts as a vasodilator and clean any cholesterol or fat out of the minute circulation that feeds the ears.
Brilliant.
But there's so much more to it. I'll also use a buckwheat extract to strengthen them. But yes, we have to get down to what the cause is that's actually behind the ringing of the ears.
Okay.
I've also found that taking grains and gluten out of the diet helps that as well. But we're looking at 6 to 9 months to get relief of tinnitus.
Maybe we can talk about it a little bit more. It's a significant issue, and we're seeing more of it. And since there's so many variables, maybe there's a deficiency component, maybe there's some markers that show up in skin, nails, or tongue you can address. But I'm going to close with this last comment. Sarah said that she saw you at the Triple Oaks Urban Garden Center in New Jersey for their herb festival a couple of years ago. Says you were just wonderful, and she uses your book as a reference in her herbal and nutrition practices all the time, and thanks you for this wonderful information, as I do.
Oh, and thank you for that lovely feedback.
Absolutely. So I have a couple of closing comments. It'll just take a couple minutes. I want to remind everybody this was recorded, and it'll be available by the end of the week up on our website. There's a survey to fill out after the webinar ends, as I mentioned. Please help us out and fill it out and give us your comments. I'm going to look at it first thing in the morning to see what you have to say. So thank you so much for that. Reminder also, tomorrow is our All About Alumni presentation with Lori Ellis. So that's at noon Pacific time. It's a 30-minute segment where she presents, and then we have 10 or 15 minutes after that for your questions. It's a great spot. She's going to talk about her Back in a Whack program that I'm just thrilled for you to know about. What else? Oh, we need to tell them, Donna, that you're coming back in 2 weeks for part 2 of
Yes.
this presentation, right? And you're going to focus more on nails and skin in that time, is that right?
Yes, and we'll also go over some tongue deficiencies as not to be repetitive with what I covered today.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks everybody for being here. This concludes our presentation for this evening. Thanks, Donna, so much. Everybody have a good time looking at your tongues tonight and figuring out what it means and what you can do to be healthier.
Thank you.
You bet. Take care.
Bye-bye.